Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 369. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Stacy. That is at StacyPan89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this Tuesday morning?
Pretty good. Happy to see the Knicks win yesterday. Tough game coming up tonight, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how they do tonight. Back to back. Hopefully OG is back. We know Randle will not be back tonight. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram, posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. That would be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles. Coffee mugs, I said that? Whatever. Anyway, you name it, we've got it. We got it all on there. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to our newest podcast, Takes from Obvious Bozos, that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. You also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave with the Knicks team more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Mariner, one of the best in the business. And now you also get access to Strictly NFL, our newest podcast. That is about it. That is about the NFL. You guessed it. All right. And there are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly today, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. It's playoff time. The road to Vegas goes through San Francisco and Baltimore. I guess not anymore. BetOnline is your number one source for playoff football odds, stats, trends, and lines. With everything from point spreads to hundreds of performance props, head to BetOnline today to stay updated on all the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the Knicks continue to win basketball games. They took care of business against the Hornets last night, a game that was tight in the first half. Then they blew it open in the third quarter when, the team, Brunson and DiVincenzo specifically, but as a group, they scored 44 points in the quarter. Really, really impressive. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say other than that. They were kind of magnificent in that quarter, and that pretty much was the game. DiVincenzo again. Look, obviously we've said plenty about Brunson, but and deservedly so. He's peaking at an age where you would expect him to start to peak. He's 27 years old, entering his prime. Makes a lot of sense. DiVincenzo also entering his prime, actually. He's 26 years old. But, this is by far and away, I think, his best season as a pro. And, obviously, I'm sure the Villanova connection helped. We also saw that with Omari Spellman previously. Just because you're from Villanova does not mean that you're going to be long for the Knicks. But kudos to the front office for pulling the trigger on signing him, getting him to sign below the full mid-level, actually, at 4 years, $47 million, because right now that contract looks like one of the best non-rookie scale bargains in the league.
Yeah, it's just, it gives the Knicks a different level of shooting than they had. Grimes has that quick trigger, but in many ways, DiVincenzo seems contest agnostic. He can pull up from deep. He moves really well. He functions as that kind of connector piece that allows you to maybe have a guy like OG who doesn't necessarily give you that the same way that maybe other connector wings do, right? Obviously, OG gives you a ton. But, one of the fascinating things yesterday was especially even that bench unit, right? How much cutting there was, how much movement there was, just pretty backdoor action. All this kind of there's just so much more movement, and they can slow it down, they can attack you, they can grind you with Brunson. But that bench is starting to find its way. Even Precious, I think he's been playing really well, and he's functioning. They make up a little bit. It's obviously it's Charlotte, so it's a little bit easier, but they make up for it a little bit by, what Hart, DiVincenzo, Deuce, and Grimes can do off the ball in terms of constant movement. And I hope that remains a staple for this bench. Certainly, while they don't have a bench creator behind Brunson, and especially now with Randle out. I did want to kind of so talking about DiVincenzo, shooting the ball at a really high level. I don't know if you mentioned this on a pod yet, but you had this development theory on DiVincenzo.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned over the summer. It's not like a huge theory, but yeah, I mean, my thought was just like, he had a little bit of not a weird career, but he got hurt at a pretty inopportune time. He gets hurt basically at the end of his third season. And if you remember at that time, he was regarded as like a very solid player. There was a Hollinger piece that actually came out that offseason where he does it every year where he projects the rookie scale extensions. And he uses his own metric, whatever the hell I think it's called boards. I'm not a Hollinger fan. I'm just saying it. I remember this because it was kind of an interesting thing at the time. His projection out of 4 years, $99 million. So even if you think that was an overpay, and I do think that would have been, it would have been an overpay. This is a player that people assumed was in line for at least at least a $16 to $20 million a year type of extension. He gets hurt. I forgot what exactly it was. It wasn't an ACL, but it was some type of lower body injury. And he doesn't come back until kind of midway through the next season, plays 17 games for Milwaukee, then gets traded at the deadline to Sacramento. Not really sure what happened in Sacramento, but he had a cup of coffee there, played 25 games, then he left. They pulled they didn't even exercise his restricted free agent rights. He goes to Golden State for 1 year, kind of rebuilds his value, has a good season under his belt. Not a great season, but a solid season. It's good for Golden State. Shot 39.7% from three. And it's just weird because not weird, but when you look at his kind of trajectory coming in, he shoots 40% from the field, 26.5% from three. Then his second year, he shoots 45.5% from the field, 33.5% from three. And then his third year before he got hurt, he shot 42% from the field, but 37.9% from three. And he upped his 3-point rate each season. So you were seeing a guy who was showing okay, I'm improving as a shooter year on year. And then he gets hurt. So he comes back the next year and he kind of is playing his way back into, the type of shape and all that stuff that you need to be in, get back into a rhythm. Shoots over 42 combined games with Milwaukee and Sacramento. He just shoots 35% from the field and 33.9% from three. But in Sacramento, in the last 25 games he played, he did shoot, forget the 36% from the field is whatever, but, or it's not great, obviously, but he shot 36% from three. Sorry, 37% from three. And so you're seeing again, okay, so it just took him some time maybe to get his legs underneath him. Last year, he shot 39.7% from three, so basically 40% on 5.3 attempts per game, which, he only took 7.5 shots. Sorry, 1 second. I got one. Yeah, so if you just look at kind of I don't know, I would be lying to you if I said I thought he'd shoot, fucking 42% from three on 6.5 attempts. And like you mentioned, it's not just the numbers, it's the actual quality of these shots, right? That he's pushing the boundaries. And Prez actually talked about this over the summer too, where he mentioned that DiVincenzo is one of these guys, Eric Gordon does this too, right? Where they space out beyond the line, like a few feet off of the line, and that extra space it adds value that it's kind of hard to capture really. But, you compare where Grimes spots up for, or where Deuce spots up from in comparison to DiVincenzo, it's markedly different. So, that was really it. And also the other part of this, and I do think this is 100% part of their strategy that I think they've kind of streamlined over, the time with this front office. Hartenstein, 24 when they signed him. Jalen Brunson, obviously, is 25 when they signed him. DiVincenzo, 26 when they signed him. Josh Hart, 27 or 28 when they traded for him.
Even the Randle extension, he was 28?
Younger than that. He was 26 at that time. So like they are looking for these kind of like dudes that they're good, but they're maybe undervalued, and they are not getting like, and they're kind of floating under the radar type. But yeah, I mean, look, I just think they've done a really good job, and I do think DiVincenzo is, maybe you get a little lucky with how well he's shooting, but I don't think it is luck that he's been as good as he has been.
Yeah, and I mean, just to going by some numbers. So one thing that's really of late, especially, he's actually finishing around the rim a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a couple of drives where, like early in the season, it was like, "Ugh, don't do that. You can't finish these." He has had some through contact, off balance, putting some English on the ball. He's shooting 62% at the rim, which is the highest he's shot since his second year in Milwaukee, where he shot 66%. But the volume he's taking 17% of his shots from at the rim. It's worth noting his first couple of years in Milwaukee, he's a pretty athletic guy, and his rim frequency was 25%, 34%, and then that third year that you mentioned, he took 26% of his shots at the rim, and he was able to do that more. I think with the injuries, became more 3-point oriented, and as his 3-point shot improved, became more 3-point oriented. But he's now back to taking 17% of his shots at the rim. Last year in Golden State, only 12%. And you're seeing that in terms of increased efficiency. His advanced stats are actually pretty bonkers right now. Has a 62% true shooting, which I imagine would lead the Knicks in all non-centers. He has his BPM is 3.9, which is all-star level. For example, last year Julius Randle was 3.7 BPM. 2 years before that, 3.8.
You're saying DiVincenzo's better than Julius Randle?
That's what I'm trying not to say. What I am saying is it's very, like, the impact he's having is very impressive. I think the only person on the Knicks that's probably higher, I know Jalen Brunson is like in the fours.
Is it Precious?
I don't think it's Precious. But box plus minus, I think, is a pretty, as far as advanced stats go, I tend to trust it a little bit more. Brunson's at 4.8. Last year was 3.9. So what DiVincenzo's doing is pretty damn good. But box plus minus, it uses box score stats to predict your plus minus, right? So it doesn't have maybe all the noise of just the pure on-off regressions. Some people prefer EPM. I'm sure DiVincenzo's pretty good in that as well. But yeah, just shooting the ball at an extremely high level, fits in well. I think he looks a lot better on defense next to OG, right? And definitely, I think that Grimes DiVincenzo, I think it only played 49 minutes before yesterday. I think that's anytime you can play him with good point of attack defenders. This goes for Hart too, by the way. They're very good and quickly, right? Hart, quickly, DiVincenzo are all of that archetype where they're really, really good off ball, in that free safety role, good at getting deflections. I don't know how many steals per game DiVincenzo's averaging. He's averaging over a steal per game, per 36, almost 2 steals per game. He's always been good at that. They've really been able to deploy him to his strengths, and it's just the perfect complementary piece when you have Brunson and Randle both healthy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. I don't even know if I did a good job explaining my theory. It's not really it's not like a strong theory. It's more just like, yeah, I think that he was an undervalued asset. And I thought when they signed him, I was like, this contract has a chance to be not just good value, but like a bargain.
Well, I think you're
right
also
now,
saying,
look, the way he's
the missed injury time also, when people are just healthy, they can pick up on low-hanging fruit, right? So there may have been low-hanging fruit in his game, and that you get from reps. For example, right, retooling his finishing around the rim after the injury. Those kind of things, if that hasn't happened yet, it could still happen, right? Because that's not something that just passes you by. You can still kind of add to your game, especially if you're a heady player who works hard and benefits from those reps. So I think that part of it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that they've now shown form in terms of targeting these guys, like these kind of dudes that maybe bounce around the league for whatever reason, but they're available. They're in their, entering or about to enter their prime. And it's it sounds stupid, right? When you're talking about, on the surface, it sounds stupid when you're like, oh, DiVincenzo is just entering his prime. But every player, most or 90% of players are at their best at these ages. Like this is when they peak. And so even if it's just a role player talking about, you're getting the best role player years, right? You're getting the best versions of these guys. That has a lot of value. And look, I said it as a joke a little bit about like, oh, is it Precious? Precious has been really good these last few games. Last 5 games, I think he's really strung together some strong performances. But the main thing for me is that
he even hit a 3 yesterday, right?
Yeah, he hit a 3. It was a contested 3 from the corner, actually. But like, again, he's another one of these guys who's like 23, 24. He gets drafted by Miami, then he gets traded to Toronto in the Lowry deal. And now, they've got all this contract stuff going on. Doesn't really make sense with their roster, especially in terms of like building around Scotty Barnes. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll move him. And now obviously they get Quick and RJ, and hopefully those guys do well there. But the Knicks take a shot on this guy. Okay, live body, decent frame. He can play both spots. Let's see what he is, right? Like worst case scenario. Yeah, like in worst case scenario, he sucks. He's an expiring contract. We move on. Best case scenario, we have his restricted free agency rights. And I'm not saying, oh my God, what a masterclass now. But they're at least getting some value from him. And if nothing else, I mean, honestly, if nothing else, he's at least shown a level where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll give him like a Deuce McBride type of contract. I don't mind that. That's fine. Keep some quality depth in the front court. Cool.
Especially since you're going to have to you're paying one center $15 million. They're going to have to pay Hartenstein this summer. So having a cheap insurance third big plus Sims, that's pretty quality depth at a position where you're going to be investing a lot of resources.
Yeah. So it's just they've like just interesting how they've managed to target these type of guys. I don't think Malachi Flynn is going to amount to much. And honestly, I don't really know that they even plan to give. I mean, they made it seems pretty obvious they didn't really even want to give him a role, right? Like they extended Deuce the day they made the fucking deal, which kind of guaranteed, at least in my head, like I was like, okay, so Deuce is the backup point guard for now anyway. I don't think Deuce is guaranteed anything either, right? Like we've all talked about it, that the Knicks need to go get another ball handler, creator, whatever. I think that's even more paramount now that Randle is out for who knows? We don't have a definitive timeline or anything yet, but at least for the next however many weeks, it's going to be even more important. But like Deuce is another guy, and that they've just like. He's a solid guy. He's a good dude to have in the rotation, especially like when you're shorthanded, like, he stays prepared and all that type of stuff. And the last, just to go back to DiVincenzo very briefly, you mentioned his finishing has improved. One thing I've noticed, and I mean, thank God for this, he hasn't done one of those inside right hand finesse finishes in a long time. I haven't seen one of those in forever. And those were the ones that I was like, oh my God, those drove me so fucking nuts, because I feel like he went 2 for 25 on those.
He got blocked a lot on those too, right? So
yeah. So I mean, I don't know if that's something that they worked on. I don't know if that's something that they like pointed out to him.
I think that's probably partly
it is noticeable.
And if he did have what was his injury early in his career?
Something to his lower body. I don't know what the hell it was.
Yeah. So I mean, if you remember, again in college, this guy came out as a pretty athletic player, right? The shooting wasn't
athletic, yeah.
But I think that probably I would imagine that confidence, right? To not like you go for an inside hand finish often because you're trying to trick the defender, right? You don't have the confidence maybe in your lift to like go up over the top. And he's been making lefty finishes through contact, right? So he
tore a ligament in his left ankle.
So it probably took some time, especially when you think about, layups, it probably took some time for him to regain that strength. And now the confidence and like the ability to be like, no, I can actually, I have the lift now to finish over guys. That probably is where the light bulb finally came on this season, right? So,
yep, yeah. So yeah, great performance from DiVincenzo. He took a career high actually yesterday, 22 shots, and I don't even care. I mean, they needed him, or they needed somebody to pick up the usage, and he certainly did yesterday. I mean, he was really good. Like you mentioned, career highs basically across the board here. He's got his highest points per game, his best overall field goal percentage, his best 3-point percentage. He's shooting more threes than he ever has. His highest EFG, his highest true shooting. Free throw shooting has been a little weird, although yesterday I believe he went 2 for 2. so he didn't miss. Assists are down. I actually think that's a good thing because I think he can get a little wild when you need hit to when he starts trying to create. But the good thing, 2.3 assists to 1.1 turnovers, I'm fine with that. His rebounding is really solid for a guard. I don't even think the numbers particularly do it justice. He's only averaging 3.2 rebounds per game this year, but he's a guy that you feel pretty good about holding his own on the glass, even though he is a bit undersized, even for the 2-guard spot. So again,
he gives you some secondary ball handling too, right? Like he can create a little bit. So it's kind of that point guard by committee for the bench because Deuce can't really give you that, but he can handle it. Hart can do some things, right? So
yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, he's just been really, really good for them, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. Obviously, Jalen Brunson last night, another fantastic performance from him. I don't even know what the hell. The best thing about watching this game last night, I barely looked at the box score. I've been barely looking at the team's box scores during this run because
the game isn't played on spreadsheets.
Yes. Just ask ask
Ricky G.
Ask Ricky G. Ask anybody who hates Dan Campbell now because he got owned by the nerds or something. Jalen Brunson last night, 32 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 13 to 24 from the field. I mean, just the variety of ways he's able to hurt teams now, right? Like yesterday, he's only 2 for 6 from 3. And
one of those was like a bomb from deep, though. He's starting to expand his range and take maybe got quite Dame or Steph range, but he's moving back beyond the 3-point line too.
Yeah, he played really well. The best thing about that too, Brunson only played 34 minutes last night. So Tibbs actually Tibbs clearly designated he's like, okay, Josh Hart and DiVincenzo, you guys are going to be the innings eaters for me on this back-to-back because the Knicks do play tonight against Utah. But yeah, they played. And
I got 29 points, so it was kind of annoying that he had to come back in the end. So
yeah, it was a little annoying, but it happens. I thought I know Grimes did not shoot well. 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3. I thought he played fine. I thought he gave them good defense. I thought there were moments. He had one really nice play where the Hornets went zone. He cut to the free throw line and then threw a pass right back out to DiVincenzo, who nailed a 3. I like that he's getting more minutes now. I think Tibbs' rotations, even in a game like last night, last night would have been a perfect excuse for him, right? To just dial it up for Brunson and dial it. And I know they were up, so maybe he didn't need to. But he's shown a lot of improvement, especially in this last since that Brooklyn game, where the rotations have just been a lot cleaner. They've been a lot better. He's balancing guys out. He's not running anybody into the red zone with minutes too much. So kudos to Tibbs. He's done a really, really good job of late. And yeah, I mean, look, what else is there to say? I just thought this team played exactly the game they needed to last night against an opponent that was there for the taking. Obviously, no LaMelo Ball helped, and just the fact that the Hornets suck helped. But
I think it was a team completely bereft. I actually was impressed by Brandon Miller, and I've been impressed with him pretty much every time he's played. The abuser, obviously can still get to the rim and stuff. So
Precious did a really, really good job on Miles Bridges last night. I know he ended up 10 of 20 from the field, but I thought he really had to work from that, work for his 21 points. I mean, 21 points on 20 shots is not exactly anything spectacular. But I thought Precious did a really, really nice job on it.
Yeah, so I mean, they did what they're supposed to against a bad team. And they only really needed one explosive quarter to do that. Brunson, I think he has to be in the conversation as a top 10 player at this point, at least what he's doing this season. I'm not going to complain about the All-Star. I think he should have gotten in over Dame. I think your mileage may vary with Mitchell versus Brunson. We're going to be biased towards Brunson, but Donovan Mitchell is having an amazing season. Let's not get it twisted there. But I mean, what Brunson is doing statistically, just watching the game, he is a machine. He is inevitable. He's going to get to his spots. If anything, the one criticism I had of him yesterday was I thought he passed up on those floaters in mid-range a little bit too much. There were times when he had the open floater and he would kick it out or he would try to pass the ball. And it's and I think it's a good thing long-term because they're probably trying to orient him to be especially once they get to the playoffs to like, switch up and keep the defense guessing and get other guys involved. But that shot just feels so automatic once he gets below the free throw line. You almost want him to shoot it every time. And even when guys are in the right place, he's constantly keeping you off balance. His footwork and the touch around the rim reminds me a little bit of Jokic, to be honest. Like just the way that like he's not moving that fast, but you just can't get a feel for what he's going to do, and he can hit from any angle there. He had that one on Jimmy the other day where Jimmy had him dead to rights, and he just did this little scoop lefty around him. Like I don't know how you guard that, right? And I think that the whole team is just playing at a really high level. The schedule's opening up, and that is what really sucks about this Randle injury, because I think they're really priming to go on a run here. And this was a stretch I thought they could go 9-1, starting with I think that Brooklyn game. Now, like against Utah, that's going to be tough tonight, right? How do you think the Knicks adapt? I guess what are how do you see them adapting to losing Randle? And I'll say this: Randle's been awesome this year. That is not an easy piece to replace on either end. We've complained a lot about his defense, but it is something that on defense, even you can throw him at a guy like Giannis. You can throw like his body and like his ability to move can get on ball and with some switching, especially when he puts his hands up, gives you a little bit of options that, if you play Precious at the 4, maybe you have that. But even OG isn't quite as big as Randle. And on offense, I think it just having to deal with Brunson, and then the fact that there's so many times when we've played solid teams and you're just like, yeah, but who guard? They have no one they can throw at Randle. He's just too big. He can get below the free throw line with his brute force pretty much at will. The decision making has been better this year, although obviously it's never going to be, the kind of thing where you want him to constantly have the ball in his hands, facing double teams. But he's gotten better at that. And just that was it almost at times felt like a cheat code. It's just like, yeah, this guy's going to like give him the ball, and like there is no one that can be between him and the rim. How do you see them kind of adapting to life without Randle, however long that may be?
I'm actually, look, I'm not going to say I'm happy, but I'm not happy with the injury, obviously. Like the way they were playing, the way he was playing. I will say this, I mentioned this on the rundown last night, and I was thinking about it when I was watching the game on Saturday, but watching that game on Saturday, that was like the most in on Randle I have been in a long, maybe ever. Like I just thought that the way I was talking to my friend about it, but like I thought last year they thought they were better than Miami. I think if you gave them truth serum, they'd be like, yeah, we should have won. We think we should have won that series. We had better talent. We should have done it. I think this year they know they're better than Miami. And I think that's a big difference. I think they go into these games against these top teams, especially since they got OG. And I feel like they're playing with a kind of, I don't want to say a little bit of a swagger maybe, but like they are confident. I don't think that they view themselves any longer as like, we're punching up. We're trying to prove, like, I think they believe.
They're not the scrappy underdog, right? This is, I think throughout the Tibbs era, it's like, man, they don't have star power yet, but they're just, no one wants to play them. They're a pain in the ass to play. They've evolved beyond that where they're like, actually like, no, this is like just a great team, period.
Yeah, they're a pain in the ass to play because they're actually just really good. And they're strong and they're big. And like, that's the other thing that stood out to me in that Miami game is like, and again, you talk about like the guys they've targeted, like they've targeted all these guys that are, into their primes and are like athletic and strong. And like, they like this team. I mean, go back and watch that Miami game. I've never felt this way watching a Knicks team play against Miami, even going back to like the 90s. Like, yeah, I mean, look, you'd watch those games, you'd be like, well, obviously they're not getting pushed around, but I don't think you watch those games and we're like, man, they're pushing Miami around. Like, they were fucking pushing Miami around in that game. They were just physically dominant. You look at some of those drives, like even Grimes, right? Grimes has not been the best driver in the world, but he saw like, oh, I have Tyler Hero on me. Oh, I have Duncan Robinson on me or whatever. And he just would drive at them directly right through their chest. You saw Josh Hart do that a couple of times. You saw OG Anunoby do that a few times. Obviously Randle, like they were just stronger than them and they were more athletic and they felt, you could feel it. You could see it. It was visible. Like and it was like, look, Miami, the Knicks didn't even play a clean game, right? They got outscored in transition. I think at the start of the fourth quarter, it was like 25-2, the points in transition. Like
They had a lot of turnovers. Yeah,
they had a lot of turnover. Like they didn't play a clean game, and as soon as they kind of like they locked in for what stretches, like they basically locked in
the
to
second
start.
quarter and the
Yeah.
first and fourth quarter, and
Yeah,
then the first and third were disasters, particularly.
Yeah,
so.
and that's all it took, and they just blew the fucking brakes off Miami. And I know Miami's not in a good run right now. They lost again yesterday, so I think that's their 7th loss in a row now. So obviously they're not playing great ball right now, but I mean that's what you do, right? When teams that aren't playing great ball show up, you put the fucking hammer down and let them have it. And the Knicks did that. I can't say I was just really, really impressed by that. And I very specifically was impressed by Randle, who didn't get off to a good start in that game. And we've seen those things, especially against a team like Miami, a guy like Bam, that they can spiral for him. And it didn't. Like he took, like he did not force the action. I thought actually his shot selection improved as the game went on.
He missed a couple of bunnies. Really, his stat line didn't even look that good. He missed a couple of shots he doesn't miss at all. Yeah, I think on that note, like his mental toughness and this whole team's right on kind of the same note that you were talking about. Like what I've mentioned this a bunch of times. I don't know if he's gotten a tech all season, Randle, which is a massive change, right? You see it maybe once a game now, but the instances where he forces a shot and doesn't get back on defense, that has gone down. And I will say this, I was complaining a lot during that game about the officiating. I thought, especially during the end of the third quarter, Jimmy was just getting every call. Miami was getting away with it. And I think that's where you can see also the shift in mentality, the swagger, right? You don't see the Knicks complaining. They used to complain a lot. Hart, Randle obviously was the most visible. Tibbs still is going to do what coaches do and complain about calls and try to work that. But I think that part of the reason why they're complaining less is there is just a confidence, right? It doesn't feel to them when they play in these big games like we need everything to go our way and just harping on those calls. They're just like, no, we're still going to win. Like we can still win. We're here. We're the better team. And I mean, it's not just Miami. They did it. Look what they did to Denver. they eviscerated Denver without Hartenstein. Again, Precious was awesome that day. I don't know how the eye injury might have affected Jokic. I mentioned this before, but if you look at the last 2 times they played the Nuggets, they've won. But Jokic has had 6 turnovers each time. He's had his like 30 and 10 or whatever. He gets his assists, rebounds, pushes up near triple double. But they force him to turnovers. They take away the easy reads. And as much as Jokic is capable of beating you by himself, you prefer that than when he's able to really throw the ball around. But yeah, kind of on your point, it was like they just seem a lot mentally tougher. It starts with Randle, but just there's a lot less complaining and a lot less of that officiating, and I think that comes from just their increased confidence.
Yeah. I don't really have much more to say. I just think that they're in a good space as a team. And I think again, Vic, this was referenced when they made the trade for OG. Some of the reasoning was, and I think Katz had this in his piece, one of his pieces after the trade, about how guys were not happy about minutes, guys were not happy about their roles, and he didn't mention any specific names, and I don't think it was just Quickly or RJ. Like I do think maybe Grimes, but I also think guys like DiVincenzo, guys like Josh Hart, Josh Hart. I mean, if you remember, there was that report, right, that I think Katz actually I had this too earlier in the season. He mentioned that Josh Hart would play the 4, but he wasn't super thrilled about it. And I do think that asking him to do that for a full season probably would have been too much, especially because Tibbs didn't trust RJ to do things at the 4 that you kind of need if you're gonna try that lookout, play a little smaller. And he didn't trust him to do it, and I think he was right to not trust him. As far to go back to your initial question about how they weather the storm, the part that I am very interested in is, and like, I don't, I mean, this is really stupid because it shouldn't take you this long to realize it. But like, again, going back to that Miami game, just watching it, I'm like, this is like what you mean. This is what we mean when we're talking about like to get like a small four, like a small ball four, because he's not really a small ball four, right? Or not Precious. OG's not like a small ball four. He's a pretty big guy, but like the way he plays, his aesthetic as a player, like how he plays offensively, the things he's capable of defensively, that's what's required of making lineups like that work. And what the kind of the point I was trying to make with when I brought up Josh Hart and RJ Barrett is like neither of the guys play that way. They're not capable of that. So like what is interesting to me is okay, Julius Randle obviously has gravity of his own in a very special way, and it's very different from the type of like what many are conditioned to think of, and what I think we have also been kind of like wanting to see is like, okay, but like what does it look like when you have more of a spacing four, more of a guy that's comfortable spotting up outside from the arc and opening up the paint for Brunson. And I am interested to see how that looks over a longer sample with OG at the four, offensively anyway. And actually, I don't know. I don't think Precious is a legit shooter. I'm not expecting that. But like seeing him yesterday, I know, like, yeah, it's the Hornets, but you mentioned it, like, Miles Bridges, whatever else he is a dynamic player, and he's definitely an athletic player, a guy who's given the Knicks problems before. And like watching Precious the way he defended him yesterday, I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I mean, not that I was like pessimistic about it anyway, but I'm a little bit more optimistic about like, okay, I think the Knicks are probably okay. Like they probably like if OG is relatively healthy and everybody else stays relatively healthy, like I think they'll be fine managing the rest of the regular season until whenever Julius gets back. Hopefully, obviously, that is this season, and hopefully that is well before the playoffs, so that he can play himself kind of back into the swing of things. But like, I think they have enough. I think they're fine on that front. Just go get another guard, and I'm ready to roll with this team.
Yeah, it's I mean, I did feel like when you had the Precious and Sims lineups, things were clunky. Like they were trapping Brunson, and he would find an open guy in the corner. Oh no, it's Sims, right? So
but isn't that like that's kind of why you need to get another creator? Is like I think what you would lean into is I think Sims minutes would have to go, but like you lean into more small ball, like more mobile lineups. Like Precious can play the four in specific moments, but I think largely the four minutes would need to come from OG and Hart. But like, yeah, you can still mix in some Precious at the four and next to Hartenstein or something. But like, you get another guard, take Sims minutes out, and like, I think that's kind of the way to go. I do think that team still would be dangerous, and I think they'd pretty comfortably finish top 6 in the East if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really disappointing is just the way the schedule opens up. And Cleveland is on a heater right now, and they do have an easy schedule, so maybe maintaining an advantage over them would be tough. But the way Milwaukee's looked, what they did to Philadelphia, I thought the 2 seed was in play, to be honest with you. Now, less so, right? I think they should still finish top 6. They can still finish in that 4 or 5. I wanted to avoid the 4 or 5. I would almost rather be a 6 seed at this point than a 4 or 5 because I do think Boston is just the worst matchup for us. And I would love to see how we look against Milwaukee because they beat them on Christmas, but it was the same kind of script. The Knicks shot better and they were more physical for sure. I don't want to take away, but clearly they were going to give up a lot of threes no matter what to that team. I think with OG, I'm interested to see if that's still the case because if it isn't, that changes things a lot. I do want to add, like against Miami, it was clear how much better prepared they are against the zone this year. Just whatever defenses are throwing at them, there's never been like, it used to be they can't figure out a zone or they trap Brunson or they trap quickly. And the Hornets are trapping Brunson, even with Sims and Precious over on the floor, they were finding good shots. They really found something with kind of exploiting the elbow, especially with DiVincenzo and his shooting ability and his ability to, once Miami adjusted to attack that, So I think they're much more balanced and versatile team that leans into it. Another thing I wanted to ask is, so they went to an 8-man rotation yesterday. Part of it was that Fournier was unavailable. Do you think we will see Evan Fournier minutes?
No.
Do you think they'll go
I hope
8-man
not.
rotation?
I hope not. I mean, I don't know. I'm I had I participated in the peace pipe during the Miami game, so I was watching in a very special place mentally. And like I don't know, man, like watching that game, I'm just like, no, like every player acquisition that the Knicks get, everybody that plays minutes for this team, everything should be focused on what is this team. And this team is a bunch of fucking strong ass dudes. Like everybody on this team is just fucking jacked now. Like literally, like we were talking about it after the game, but it was like, okay, Brunson is strong for a point guard. Donte is at least what he's average strength for a shooting guard. I would say Grimes is average strength, if not stronger, for a shooting guard. Josh Hart, obviously stronger than your average 2 or 3. OG Anunoby, fucking beast. Randle, enough said. Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson when he's back. Even a guy like Precious. I mean, you see the way he muscled up at the 4. It's very, very impressive. Deuce McBride, he's like, he's not many things that Emmanuel Quickley is. But he's definitely stronger than Emmanuel Quickley. He's a dog too. And you just look up and down this rotation and this roster, and you're just like, holy shit, everybody on this team is just fucking ripped. And like, I don't know. For me, it was a kind of like a moment of clarity. I was like, all right, I see the vision. I'm like Tibbs pilled now. I was like, all right, I get it. I was like Tony. I was like, I get it. And I didn't do peyote, but I did have a similar awakening. But like, I was just watching, and I'm like, dude, just
was it?
nah. Me, Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Poyer.
You weren't shitting yourself, right?
No, but like, I don't know, man. I was watching that game, and I was like, you know what? Just fucking get me Malcolm Brogdon because he fits in exactly with like we need somebody that can give us dribble penetration. He is fucking jacked. Like, just get us that, and let's keep it rolling. Like I don't think I need to like. I saw the vision, right? I saw the vision on Saturday. I saw the vision again yesterday. Like, just keep getting these fucking in prime or somewhere in their prime or close to prime, jacked fucking dudes, and we will go from there because what the Knicks have right now is going. And I think it's important to have players that fit into what you are, how you identify. And like, look, like I love Alec Burks, but I don't want Alec Burks on this team. I don't want his fucking 34-year-old ass. Like, dude, the guy's a good shooter. The Knicks are already a good shooting team. They don't need more shooting. They need people that can get into the paint and create inside. Like Bojan Bogdanovic is a hell of a player. I don't really think the Knicks need what he brings to the table there. I think that they need dribble penetration. And obviously, like, again, I just think Brogdon makes sense at that level. And I think he makes sense in terms of like what this team is. Like, what is this team? They're a physical team that is going to beat you up, and you're going to feel it after playing them for 48 minutes. Like, you're going to go into that locker room and you're like, God damn, I don't want to play that team again. So yeah, I don't know. Like,
do you think that applies to Bruce Brown as well?
To a lesser
He's
degree.
A pretty physical guy, right?
Yeah, to a lesser degree. Yeah, I think so. Like, give me one of these guys. Like, just keep getting good players. That's it. Like, I don't think this needs to be like, we don't need to think too deep about this, especially with Randle out. I almost feel like because Randle is out, you have more latitude with like chasing guys that have some imperfections, I guess. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm just, all I'm saying is that I have seen the light. I am now Tom Thibodeau's #1 supporter, and I am all for never playing small. No, I still think they have option. They should play small at times. Whatever. They don't really have that option, right? I mean, I guess they are being forced into that option a little bit right now with Randle out. I do think that's something they should explore more when Randle is back. I will say you kind of see how this team is rolling. Precious for all his flaws, Sims for all their flaws. They're more mobile, they're more skilled than Mitchell Robinson with the ball in their hands. I'm not sure how much that matters, but I do think it's interesting to just see what this team looks like with some baseline level of just like the ability to get the ball, dribble into a dribble handoff, and then move. Like, it is interesting to see how they look. They look more mobile. They look more active in certain ways. Obviously, I'm not, Mitch is not inactive, and he's a great defensive player, obviously. I do think the more you see this team without Mitchell Robinson, though, it is interesting. I love the guy, and I'm like the captain of, give me, like, respect our guys. We need to have players we drafted and developed, and there needs to be a connection to the team and blah, blah, blah. But, like, the Knicks are in a contention window right now. Like, they're a legit threat. They are a threat. If Randle's healthy, this team is a contender. I've seen enough to say that. Like, I don't think there's a team outside of Boston in the East that I think is in a different class to us. Like, and even though I think Boston is in a different class, there are things about them very specifically that I still expect to be problematic for them in the playoffs that I think the Knicks could exploit and other teams can exploit. But, like, aside from them, I'm not that worried about playing Philly. I'm not worried. And this isn't to say like it's a cakewalk, but I don't, like,
they have their 50-50 in a lot of those series, I think.
Yeah. Like if you, and I get, like, if you want to say, well, those teams have the best player. Okay, fine. I would say we probably have the second best player in all those series. I would say we arguably have, if not the third, we probably have the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh best players in those series. Like, I get it. Playoffs are determined by your top guys in a lot of cases. But as we saw in the Cavs series last year, and I think you can also argue what we saw in the Miami series, the guys, your depth guys matter. Like, they have to play well. And if they don't, you're going to struggle. So the Knicks are in a really good spot. And honestly, like, I got to say, the last part of this, of my spiritual journey on Saturday watching this game, I think our depth got better after the trade somehow. Like, now that Tibbs has, like, figured out rotations and stuff, I was like watching that. I'm like, wait, is our depth better now? Does it, like, make more sense? Because I still, like, again, a lot of this is contingent on, like, get another ball handler. But if they do, let's say they just get Brogdon, right? For, let's say it costs a first and whoever the fuck, and they get Brogdon. So let's just say a first and Fournier, or two first, whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's just say it's Fournier is the guy that's going out and you get Brogdon. Isn't that team deeper now? And doesn't it have more tactical versatility? Like, a guy like Precious gives you an option that you just didn't really have, in terms of, like, his mobility, his size, all that stuff. Like, I mean, we saw him play with Randle quite a bit, obviously, over this stretch. Whatever their weaknesses were, did you watch their minutes together and feel like, man, they're giving up a lot of size here? Like, because and his, obviously he's not like a true stretch five or something, but there is a little bit more space, right? With Precious on the floor at the five next to Randle. It's interesting. Like, it's not, obviously, it's not like we have Porzingis there, but it is just interesting to see this team, the options they have now after the trade. And then, like, when you project forward to, like, if and when they get another piece, like, I don't know, this team's really deep and they have a lot of options. This is the best team they're going to assemble, I think, probably in terms of depth. This is probably going to be the strongest team they assemble in this era, so to speak.
Because you anticipate eventually another consolidation trade.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think I'm actually higher on Alec Burks adding him than you are. I think he can, he doesn't finish well at all, but he can get to the line. He's a 32 free throw rate. I think he can do a better job running those bench lineups than Deuce has been. And obviously really good shooter. So obviously can play next to Brunson. He gives you some size. He's not known as the most physical guy, but he's actually a pretty solid defender when he was in New York. I would imagine it hasn't looked as good as in Detroit. The worry with Burks, I think, is that he's not been a paragon of health. He played 81 games in that season where he played point guard for Tibbs, but the year before that it was only 49. That was the COVID season, so it was shortened, but still 49 out of 70 games or 72 games, not great. Last year, I
can't believe this guy got fucking 81 games out of Alec Burks. Ridiculous.
And like 30, and he was playing like 35, 36
Just
for a lot
crazy.
of it.
No, it was crazy. Like there was that game in LA that year against the Lakers where he played like the last 27 minutes of the game or something.
Yeah. Tibbs gonna Tibbs. But I wouldn't, if the price is cheap, I wouldn't mind going after Alec Burks. I think I'd prefer Brogdon like you because he does give you a little bit more interior game, probably a little bit sturdier as a defender.
I mean, you could even see it last night. Like the Knicks are like, especially with Randle out, and honestly, since the trade, they are more dependent on the three ball offensively. I do think they also have better spacing, so it's like chicken or egg type of thing. But they are like a more 3-point focused group. I don't know. I actually have to check this, but I would assume they have not been getting to the line as much as they were prior to the trade as a team. So
they lost a big free throw rate guy in RJ and replaced him
and Quick.
Yeah.
And so like you replace them with OG, who is really good, obviously, and been fucking awesome, but like is not that free throw guy. So getting a guy like Brogdon gives you, like, to your point, like it diversifies what your scoring is, right? And I think the Knicks need that even when Randle is healthy, right? There are times where you're like, man, it would be really nice to have like a third guy that we could just throw the ball to here and let him cook, as ball don't stop would.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think Burks.
Do you think Brogdon would get the ball don't stop stamp?
No. He is kind of a boring player, right? There isn't a whole lot of swagoo to his game. I mean, I will say that I think Burks does give you that. He's not a good finisher, but like I said, he gets the line a lot. He's
a real hooper too.
Burks is peak. Well, he's 73% ball don't stop, right? Like that is like the most true statement I've ever read. Like Alec Burks is like a superstar who's top loading at 73%, which is both a compliment and obviously a little bit of a pejorative.
I saw a really good one last week where somebody was like, Alec Burks is like a really good role player, but it's like 50% of his games are him playing like a star, and then 50% of his games are him playing like absolute dog shit. So the aggregate is like a really good role player, but it's ridiculous how he gets there. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Correct.
And he's a very good jump shooter. So there's going to be more, and he relies heavily on pull-ups. There's going to be variance there.
Well, he can't jump anymore. Like he used to be a high flyer, now he can't jump. So
yeah. Well, I mean, credit to him for reinventing his game, right? So
no, his trajectory is pretty awesome, man. His like the fact that he's carved out this long of a career is pretty impressive.
So those are definitely options. I think I would rank them. Brogdon, I would prefer Burks to Bruce Brown. Honestly, even though I think Brown is a better player, I do think like that adding that pull-up shooting, he's got the size. I would not mind Alec Burks, and he's probably going to be cheap. Whereas like it seems like Brown, the price would cost Grimes. We'll see if they come down off that. Another guy who is big and physical,
PJ Washington
plays in Atlanta, and the price seems to be going down by the day for DeJounte Murray. With Randle out, what you said was some of these fits are better.
No,
but Murray
not today, Satan.
So no, you're still unmoved by a Murray.
Like I think you have more latitude, right? But ultimately, I'm assuming they still view Randle. One, I'm assuming, I'm hoping, praying that he's back this season. But two, that he's going to be here, obviously beyond this season. Like he's part of their plans moving forward. So anybody you get still has to not just fit next to Brunson, but also make sense next to Julius Randle. And more importantly, make sense alongside both of them as a lesser scoring option. DeJounte Murray still makes no sense to me in that context. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. And I don't want to deal with his bullshit. I really don't. I don't want to deal with his dad going on Twitter or whatever after a game. I don't want to deal with fucking DeJounte Murray apparently responding to somebody within 1 second on a DM. And throwing his entire team under the bus. Like, I don't want to deal with that shit. Like, this team, on top of their identity, is kind of like tough, physical, whatever. It's kind of a group that you're like very low maintenance. Like, even before the trade, like you look at the groups that they've assembled each year. Our biggest controversies have been like Austin Rivers getting dumped from the rotation, and Cam Reddish getting dumped from the rotation, and Kemba getting dumped from the rotation. Like those are our big,
28, but
but like these are our big, like, huge crises moments. Like, I don't know, man. Or like Mitch going on Snapchat after a game and complaining about touches. Like, but it's like Mitch, so you know it's stupid. Like you're just like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, like get it out, get it all out. Like our biggest thing this year, right? Our most like the most controversy that we've kind of dealt with this year publicly with players is Hart and Grimes at various points publicly stating like their frustration with their role in the offense. Compare that to like, I don't know, Atlanta, obviously, but compare that to a lot of teams around the league. Compare that to like the Lakers. I think the Lakers, you get like fucking 15 stories a week where you're just like, oh shit, what's going on there? For a big market team that gets the attention the Knicks do, like they've done a good job of bringing in guys that are like low maintenance, like, oh my God, like Josh Hart just said he likes drinking breast milk on Twitter. That's like our huge thing. Like, it's not real controversy. So I think steering away from that and continuing to steer away from that is good, unless the talent is so overwhelming that it's worth the risk. And I'm sorry, like DeJounte Murray to me is just not going to ever be worth the risk.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I would have to agree.
Let's go. Taj is back. 10-day contract.
Is he really?
Yes.
Wow.
He won't play.
Yeah, the vibe's got to be impeccable.
Yeah.
I actually do think, like, as Precious continues to grow, I'm sure it would help to have a guy like Taj who can continue to.
That's a good point. I mean, Taj is kind of like the model, or not the model, but like he is for role player 4 or 5 guys. Like he's kind of like the model, right? Like he's like the guy that made that, like did that under Tibbs. And I think there's value. Yeah, you're right. I think there's value for a guy like Precious who profiles physically like they're pretty similar, right? They're not like the biggest dudes, but they're both pretty athletic. Makes sense.
Yeah. So welcome back, Taj. I think that I do want to talk a little bit about so I mean I think our rankings are probably the same, right? Brogdon, Burks, and then Bruce Brown, right? Maybe you prefer Brown to Burks?
I prefer Brown and Burks, yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else? I mean, people have talked about kind of the Godfather package for Mikal Bridges. Personally, if they did that, I would like. I think the trade Bobby Marks suggested had 2 unprotecteds, and then 1 lightly protected, and then 2 of the protected picks Knicks own from other teams, and Grimes, right? I don't know if I would do that for Bridges. I might think about that for someone like Lauri Markkanen. Do you think there's any chance that kind of a trade gets made?
What would the parameters be?
Let's say that like a big trade where you're trading 2-3 firsts and Grimes.
No, I don't think that'll happen this deadline.
I mean, is there still interest for you with Lowry, even now that they have OG, or?
Would I like Lowry? Is that basically the question?
Yeah. I mean, is there still interest there? Yeah. That's something you might be interested in?
I got a 15-inch cock. I'm like always kind of in on Kyle Lowry. I'm like I like him. I just think that like he's an annoying person to play against, and he does annoying things that I think.
Has he even been that bad this year?
He's not. He can't. The problem is Miami needed him to play like 30 minutes a night, and he can't do that shit. Like he can't do that shit anymore. I still think that if you bring him in and he's like, and you're like, look, you're gonna play fucking 18 minutes a night. That's what you're doing. Okay, this is your role. You have to make that clear before you bring him in. Like we're not. This is the no fucking around crew, right? Like we're fucking. This is what we're doing. You have to be okay with being the backup point guard. You might get some minutes with Brunson. You're not going to get a lot. You're the backup point guard. Those are your minutes. If you make that clear to him and he's fine with that, I'm fine bringing him in. I'm happy to bring him in then. Because I still think that, like, if you manage his minutes, look, we saw this in the playoffs last year. How annoying was it last year where you're like, oh, so Kyle Lowry's good again. Like, great. Like, I did not anticipate this before our playoff series. And he still has all those kind of like annoying, crafty Marcus Smart type of tricks of the trade defensively. I like his toughness. Obviously, I love that he went to Villanova. I mean, I don't really give a shit about that, but like I do think that's like a cool thing. He's kind of like the original, the OG, as you will. We also have like he has the Raptors connection going with OG and Precious, so that's cool. Yeah, I'd be fine. I'd be fine with Lowry in a buyout, sure.
Do you think there's any chance they go after a guy like Gordon Hayward on the buyout market?
Yes.
Would you be into that?
Probably a little less so. I just think he's so unreliable with injury. That worries me a little bit.
Because he gives you some size, obviously a Tibbs favorite, can really shoot the ball, gives you some secondary creation. I also think it'd be interesting because if they do add another piece, I would like them to keep giving Deuce minutes. I just don't really love him on ball, but the way he's shooting the ball and the defense he provides, and even what he's shown in terms of being able to drive and finish a little bit, I'd like to maintain him. So I think like if they get a guy like Burks or Hayward, it probably gives you more ability to keep playing Deuce in like that off ball role. So I wouldn't mind that. I agree Lowry is like as a flyer, but I mean, you would say Lowry in addition to Brogdon, or do you think that if they can't make a deal?
I would like Lowry if they don't do a deal.
But your preference, I would imagine, is still to just do a deal for Brogdon. Right?
Yes, that'd be my strong preference because I still think ultimately, like, you actually want some. Like, I would like somebody who has a little bit more to their game than just like I can play 15 minutes when Brunson sits. Brogdon obviously can do more. I think he's just played really solid ball for Portland when I've watched them anyway. Which admittedly is not like I'm not exactly crunching Blazers tape nonstop, but he's just looked competent, and he's competent at the stuff that we care about him being competent in. We know he can shoot the ball. He's shooting 42% from three. He's a career 39% three guy. Like, so even if he drops off, he's going to drop off to what? Still being pretty fucking damn good.
We've seen him perform in the playoffs, right? He had a good series with Indiana, even though they got swept.
He had a good series when he was with Milwaukee. When they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, I thought he was really good in that series.
Yeah, so that's another thing, right? It's you don't have those kind of concerns that you might with a player like actually all three of these guys are Burks was fine in the playoffs, I thought. And obviously Bruce Brown was really good in the playoffs since we got him paid. So yeah, I mean, I think that and Brogdon has shown the ability to scale up and down as the situation needs it. I think the only concern for me is kind of the health stuff. But he gives you that big physical guard who can get to the rim, but also defend and shoot. So it just checks a lot of boxes. Not the world's greatest passer, but doesn't turn the ball over. I think it'd fit pretty well with the team's identity. Going forward, so they have Utah tonight. Are you worried about that game?
Sure. Yeah, I am a little worried about that game. But one, I have a soccer game during that, so I'll not be watching it live. So there's that. Two, like, look, if they lose a game, fine. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to fucking lose my mind because they lost a game after, what are they, 13-2 now since the Precious, or since the, so I'm calling it the Precious trade now, since the Precious Achiuwa trade. The 13-2 since that trade, if they lose a game to Utah in the second out of back-to-back, let's say that Randle is out, and let's say OG's out too. Like, are you going to be upset about that? I'm not. I'll be like, okay, it happens sometimes. No big deal. I think getting the Charlotte win was more important, right? Because it's like the front end of the back-to-back. It's a team that you probably are banking pretty hard on when the schedule even drops at the start of the season, right? That's a game where you're like, okay, got to win that one. Utah, maybe you feel that way too. They've been pretty bad lately. They got absolutely fucking destroyed yesterday by the Nets. Like, completely embarrassed. 147-114. But like, they have talent. They can score the ball. They play a brand of basketball that I think is tough. I wonder if they're going through some internal stuff right now too, with all their guys kind of being listed in trade talks. Maybe that's creating a little weird dynamic before this trade deadline. But like, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. Like, am I worried about it? Sure, I'm worried about it because I think we might be shorthanded again. I mean, we're going to be shorthanded no matter what, right? With Randle out and Mitchell Robinson out. Let's not forget that. And Hartenstein on a minutes limit. So, like, yeah, we are shorthanded, but I think they can definitely still win this game. And I think if OG plays, they will win this game.
Yeah, I mean, it is that their team. Utah's been playing well until, I mean, yesterday, obviously, they had a disaster. It's a second night of a back-to-back for both teams.
But there's this bullshit. They're traveling from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Give me a break.
Yeah, but it's still second game of back-to-back, right? So
yeah, but it's different when you actually have got to like fly, and that's different.
they got walloped. I've always felt like they're the kind of team, like when it goes bad against them, the Knicks just get blown out because they're always space the floor well. They have a lot of shooters. Markkanen's always a matchup problem, although I'm excited to see. I would imagine they put Precious or sorry, OG on him, maybe a little bit of Precious too. It just feels like honestly, I could see it being a blowout either way, like more than a close game. Like the Knicks could come out and just lock them up and get out in transition. But they have some tough players that are going to cause some matchup issues. And yeah, like I mean, I just it really sucks though losing Randle just because of how much this schedule is opening up. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch. I do worry a little bit about, I guess, Brunson on Sexton. It feels like Clarkson usually plays well against us. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty. I think this will be a fun game. I mean, look, the thing is too. Like, I know they only played Charlotte yesterday, but they held them under 100. Like, they keep holding teams under 100, and another reason I'm not too worried about Randle being out right now for a long part of the regular season. I think their defense is going to be like, I think it'll probably hit another level somehow without Randle. Like, they don't have, I mean, the weakest defender is basically just Brunson at this point in the rotation. And even him, like, he has this knack, right, of drawing fouls. Like, he's basically turning the team over at least once or twice every game. That has real value. It's basically getting a stop, right? And I don't know, like I look now when you watch this team and like, look, those bench minutes are rough, but also in those bench minutes you're like, yeah, they're not going to score, but also like the other team might not score either, so we're okay. And when you have OG, like if OG's healthy again, like he just takes everything to such a different level on that end. I don't know. I'm just curious to see how this team plays out because I think like obviously this isn't intentional, but because of the injuries, it feels like Tibbs is actually going to have to lean into some interesting lineup combinations that, if nothing else, come playoff time, those are things that he will have actual information on and can make educated guesses on, which maybe he wouldn't have developed if he didn't have the injuries that we're having at the moment.
Yeah, I think it could be like a little bit like a vaccine, right? Not to scare Aaron Rodgers if he happens to listen to this podcast, but it could be something where this is obviously short-term adversity. I think you bring up a good point that the defense might even be better.
Yeah, even like I know their defensive rating right now is like godly. I do think they've benefited a little bit from some poor shooting at times, but I think the actual like how locked in each rotation is, all that type of stuff will be better. I do believe that.
Yeah, I mean, the only concern would be if Precious is playing even more minutes, is that going to
that'll be tough for the opponent.
But I mean, at some point, can he maintain? So far, it has been an issue. Obviously, can he maintain the same level of intensity, playing maybe 40 minutes consistently?
Do you think Precious has an argument to be made for most improved player?
No, not yet. There's someone else I think that's like a very obvious. It's not. I guess Maxey would be.
Deuce Pride.
I mean, well, we should talk about Deuce. Like the thing is, like, we're probably still a little underwhelmed because they expect him to be the backup point guard, right? But besides the fact that he's limited in his creation, he is shooting the leather off that ball right now. I don't know what he's up to right now, but it's got
46.9% from three.
46.9.
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just open catch and shoot. He's taking contested threes. He's been more aggressive getting downhill. He's always going to be a little bit limited in terms of space creation.
I do like that it seems like Tibbs has given him the leash now to take like one off the dribble three a game.
Yeah.
And then depending on if that goes in or it's like ugly as hell, he gets more or less. Because he airballed yesterday. I think he took one. And that was the only one he took. It was like, okay, all right, sorry. Got that out of my system.
Today. But everyone's playing at a high level, right? So you have a little bit less matchup flexibility. I am curious to see if they're really just going to unleash OG more now. But I think they'll probably. What's interesting is even without Randle, they haven't really decreased their pace, right? They're still trying to get out in transition, they're still passing the ball, moving. So they haven't really. You think maybe in some games without Randle, they would say, "All right, buckle down, make this a dogfight, right? Because we just need to. We don't want to play too fast and allow the other team to get into transition." So they haven't yet gone to that, and the feeling might be that you're going to need some transition just to get any offense, and we'll see how that balance plays out. I will say this: I am curious to see if, like, Malachi Flynn to me does seem like the kind of guy who should be situational, as in there are some situations. As you know, we've seen that DiVincenzo, Deuce, Hart, like that combination can generate offense, right? Or DiVincenzo, Grimes, and Hart, right? They give you enough traits in ball handling and the ability to lock up and get into transition where maybe that mitigates. But I'm sure there are games where they cannot get into transition as much and the offense does bog down. And for all his limitations, Malachi Flynn is probably, after Brunson, the best guard at creating his own shot. He can get to the rim, the most natural point guard. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Would you say he's a pure point guard?
I don't know. I think that's a meaningless phrase now. But like, if you want to say a pure point guard was Mark Jackson and Chris Paul is also a pure point guard, very different players, right?
Alfred Payton.
Yeah. So I do think Flynn is the kind of guy. He's a good depth piece. I've been more impressed, I think, than many others with Flynn. There are obviously there's size limitations, and he's not like a super athlete, but what he does bring you is comfort and competence there. And I think there's going to be games where you might want to play him next to Deuce. Do you think we're going to see more Deuce next to Brunson at all? Maybe with Randle out?
No, not unless OG's out. Like when OG's out, it kind of, you have to. There's just no way to make the minutes work without playing them together a little bit. But if OG is back, I don't think you'll see it much. I just don't think I don't know that he trusts them like their size defensively. I don't know. He did it with Quickly and Deuce, but that might have been because he just knew that Quick was so good at the off-ball stuff and Deuce was so good at the on-ball stuff that he's like, they'll be fine. They can manage it defensively. I think that's a little bit different with Brunson and Deuce. Brunson's definitely improved defensively this season compared to last, but like, it's still not like, a strong suit of his. You're still trying to like hide him more than you're using him to accentuate your defense. So I don't think you'll see too much of that. I will say, again, to give Tibbs his kudos and his flowers, I thought it was really nice yesterday when they went zone kind of towards the end of the first half. He went small. He left Grimes in. I thought for sure he called a timeout, and I was like, all right, because I think they went up 41-39. The Hornets. And I was like, all right, here we go. Grimes is out, and then we're going to go back to the double big thing. And instead, he left Grimes in, pulled, I forgot who it was. I think it was Sims or Hartenstein or whatever, and played Precious at the 5. And so it was Precious, Hart, Grimes, DiVincenzo, and Brunson. And, the Knicks got I think they got a 3 right after that. I mean, the spacing was just like so clearly improved, and they benefited from it. So kudos to Tibbs for leaning into that, because that was obviously, look, it's not a great opponent. It's not the biggest, most amazing tactical switch, but it is something that he doesn't always go to. And the fact that when you have Randle, you don't need to, but when you don't have Randle, you got to be a little bit more quick on your feet with this stuff, and he was yesterday. So again, credit to him. That was good to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we've said this before. I think it's when you take away his options that he seems to really it forces that creativity out of him. That's almost when he's at his best.
It's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. Fine, I'll play small. Jesus.
And then it works, right? So we'll see. I mean,
Got to take away his binky from him.
I am very curious to see what happens when they play the Lakers because there is a lot of size on that team. I don't think we'd go small against them, and not having Randle, I think, is going to hurt in that game.
Is that next week or is that this weekend?
That's Saturday. Yeah.
Is that like the primetime game Saturday?
8:30. Yeah.
Hopefully OG's back for that. We definitely need him for that one.
Yeah. He's not hurt, is he?
OG?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, I don't think it should be that serious, though, right?
I don't think so, but I think they're listing him day to day, so that can mean anything. I would assume he's back by then. Obviously, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I think.
By the way, if the Knicks win tonight, they have a decent chance of potentially putting even more separation between them and a team like Indiana. Indiana's at Boston tonight.
Yeah, and then the Knicks actually get Indiana at home on Thursday.
Right.
But in this stretch, I think the Lakers game is the one that concerns me most because you're going to have to guard both LeBron and AD. As good as OG is, you can't guard them both at the same time, right? I'm not sure the Knicks have anyone who can guard anyone else who can guard either of those guys, right? Maybe you can, especially if they play AD at the 4. So that'll be interesting to watch. But besides that, again, the schedule isn't looking that bad, right? They got the Jazz, a team they can and should beat, but will be tough. Pacers are always just kind of a tough team for the style the Knicks play in terms of giving up a lot of threes. But with OG there, I don't know. Do you throw OG at Halliburton?
I don't know. Actually, I don't. It's kind of weird. They've used OG in a lot of different ways, so it's hard to know what they will do. I think you might you probably put OG on Pascal, right?
Yeah,
that's I think what you do.
But that'll be I mean, he also has obviously the familiarity with him. Maybe that'll help in terms of defense. I do worry about Halliburton against Brunson just because of size advantage. So maybe that's a game where you go more to Quentin Grimes, or maybe you trust DiVincenzo on Halliburton. But then after the Lakers, they have the Grizzlies. I'm more comfortable against the Mavs, even though Kyrie kind of killed us last time. I think they finally have the kind of guy who can cause problems for Luka and OG. They get the Pacers again. So I mean, it's a mix. I'm very curious. I was thinking they could really go on a roll. Now I'm thinking more like just tread water, at least until the All-Star break. But we'll see.
Yeah. The All-Star break cannot get here soon enough. I think this team they've played a lot of fucking games. If you just look at the standings, they've played 47 games. That is basically the tops in the league. Not saying they're not so far ahead of other teams, but I don't know if there's a team that's played more than 47.
The Bucks and Celtics and Sixers actually all played 47.
The Nuggets have played 48. So that's the only team in the NBA that's played more than 47 games.
Yeah, somehow the Cavs have only played 44, and their schedule gets easier, which is that is a little bit unfortunate for the Knicks, who are clinging to a lead over the Cavs.
That's a division thing, right? Is that a division thing? Not really. No, they have Cleveland they have Indiana and they have Milwaukee in their division, so it can't be a division thing. What is that about?
Yeah, no clue. Just schedule quirks.
I guess they get Detroit. They do get Detroit 4 times. That's nice. They play 4 times.
It's also worth noting the Knicks are basically 6 basis points behind the Sixers. The Sixers are 29-16. The Knicks are 30-17. So they're both 6 games behind Boston. So the 3rd seed is very much in reach. They're only also 2 games back of Milwaukee for the 2nd seed. So again, like if that defense actually improves somehow even more, and they can maintain enough offense without Randle, I mean, it'd be crazy. But think about them getting the 2 seed, but they're certainly within that range right now.
I mean, they're. I mean, look, they're only 2 games back of Milwaukee, right? It's like 2 seed is there. You can get it.
And it's also worth noting they've played only 21 home games, so the Knicks are going to have a lot more home games coming up too. And they've been dominant at home.
And
6 in the 5.
well, funny enough, they've played 21 home games and 26 road games. Milwaukee has played 26 home games and 21 road games.
Yeah. So that's going to flip. Same thing with the Cavs. The Cavs have actually played more. I think every team here is, besides the Celtics, has played more home than away games, right? So the Knicks really have had a tough schedule, and I mean the cards are aligning that they made it through that part. Now they have the Randle injury, but I wouldn't. I think it's more likely they would get a 2 seed at this point than fall out of the top 6.
I'd be shocked if they fall out the top 6 at this point. I think Miami is. I mean, Miami and Orlando they're not bad teams, obviously. I don't think Miami's not. They're not as bad as they've been in this stretch. I refuse to believe that until they're dead and gone. But Orlando still has a positive point differential, slightly plus 0.5. Miami's a negative. They're minus 1.3. I fucking hate Miami, dude. How every year they have the shittiest point differential, and then they just fucking find a way to win an extra 2 or 3 games because of Spo's fucking devil magic.
I would say Pat Riley made a deal with the devil, but he might actually be Al Pacino in that movie. So who knows?
Yeah, he might be the devil. But I just think that the Knicks profile was just better. They're just a strong profile. They have one of the best point differentials in the league. They have the best net rating in the league since the OG trade. They had a top 10 net rating even before the trade, right? This is the thing. They've just profiled as a good team the entire way, whereas the Heat have profiled like shit the entire way, or most of the way, especially now. Again, they're minus 1.5 SRS. They have a 23rd offensive rating. Their defensive rating is only 14th. They have a 20th. They're 20th in net. Orlando's better, but the point is just that the Knicks are, for them to drop out would probably involve
a collapse.
Yeah, I mean, not just a collapse, but it probably involves a catastrophic list of injuries. So
yeah, well, I mean, there is one injury on the team that would be catastrophic. I think if they lost Brunson for any period of time, that would.
Well, this is why you need to go get a guy like Brogdon to me.
Yeah, I mean, even if they get Brogdon, though, they're not surviving a Brunson.
No, I mean, I think they'd survive it to finish top 6.
Maybe. I think that it's. I mean, this is the most exciting. This team would beat the 2012 team, right?
I think this is the best team they've had since '97.
Yeah. You think they beat the finals team, the 99-2000 team?
Yeah, that team was. I mean, the fact they got to the finals is pretty miraculous. But also
team had Ewing. Do you think?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's just it's hard to judge that team because Ewing gets hurt, his Achilles goes, and it was a weird team. Van Gundy was coached it like an imbecile at times. This is what people don't remember. Love Jeff Van Gundy. He did a lot of weird shit with their rotations because he was too loyal to guys. Reminds you of somebody maybe
who was on that bench, right?
Yeah, who was on that bench. And so it's a weird team. I do think that 97 team, that was the most talented version though. That was LJ was still a good player then. He hadn't had the injuries that he would go on to suffer later on in his time in New York. Houston, they had Ewing was still in his prime. That team is loaded. That team probably has it. That's one of the only 2 teams they had that had a genuine chance of beating the Jordan Bulls. The other one being the Charles Smith 93 Knicks. But 97 is the last one. And then, yeah, I mean, since then, I don't know. I think this team is definitely better than the 2012-13 team. I don't even think it's that close.
I said they would win in 6, and Larry Israel said 5. And I think actually, yeah, it's I mean, you could throw OG at Melo, and he's the kind of defender if you remember Luol Deng, right, and how Tibbs used to play Melo, that always caused him problems.
So did the fact that Melo was just not. I mean, he was not a good playoff player in New York.
he had some performances, but yeah, like I think that this team is balanced. I mean, think about the point guards in that team and asking them to guard Jalen Brunson. You know, I think that on the glass, if the Knicks, if the 2012 Knicks went small, with which they were at their best with Melo, the Knicks not only could handle that, but especially with a healthy Randle, I think they could really pound the offensive glass. And I think this team also has better depth. So it's definitely very uncharted territory. I mean, we've just been singing their praises the whole pod. I don't think we've ever had a pod that's just this unanimously positive about the team, right?
Well, I think just like Carmelo played 21 playoff games in New York, shot 40% from the field, 29.7 from three, had a 43 EFG. Jesus. 28 points, 7.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists to 2.8 turnovers. This guy literally put up 25 shots a game in the playoffs in his time in New York and scored 28 points. Good fucking Lord. Even his one, like that year, to if you want to just say, well, the first two, like, okay, just using the 2012-13 team, the actual good team they had, shot 40%, 40.6% from the field, 29.8 from three, 43.4 EFG, 28.8 points per game on 25.8 shots, 1.6 assists to 2.6 turnovers. Like
I didn't realize it was that bad. Yeah, those like Randle playoff numbers almost. I mean, obviously way higher volume and gets the free throw line better, but yeah.
His usage in these series in the playoffs is crazy too. He has a 36.6 usage over his 3 playoff runs in New York, 38 in that 2012-13 season. 2012-13 season, yeah. Pretty bad. 49.6 shooting, just not great stuff from Carmelo in New York in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, look, to the point being is this team is just better. Like, it's just better at every spot. They're younger. They're more athletic. They're not depending on, like, Rasheed Wallace to find the fountain of youth again or something. So
you want to play Rasheed? You want to play something?
Yeah, right. This team it's the best team since then. It's also just a better league now, right? So like the teams in general are better. Like if you look at the top 6 of this East versus the top 6 of that 2012-13 season, or the top 8 even, like this is a way better Eastern Conference. Quite frankly, I think the East is better than I think the top of the East is better than the top of the West. The top 6 anyway.
So we talked about Boston being maybe the only team that's outside the Knicks weight class right now. Do you think that team exists in the West? The one team I would have said the Knicks just kick the crap out of them without their starting center.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the regular season, the playoffs are different. Like, again, I'm not trying to diminish what the Knicks did because you beat that team by whatever the fuck they beat them. Was it 38 points or whatever the hell it was?
Yeah.
It says something about how good you are. But like, I think Denver is probably, I think they're still, they get the benefit of the doubt. But aside from that, I don't think Minnesota, they're really good. I'm not trying to, like, these teams are all really good, but I'm not terrified of playing like Minnesota or Oklahoma City or the Clippers. And then after that, you get into like the Kings, the Suns, the Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Lakers. Like, I'm not really scared of any of those teams. And I don't like, aside from the Lakers, I wouldn't say any of those teams are bad. They're good, but like I just wouldn't be that worried about them.
And the Lakers are just unique in that they're probably a bad team right now, but they still have 2 guys who, when they're on, are top 5 caliber players, right? So,
yeah.
On kind of that note, are the Warriors cooked?
Yeah, I think they're done.
That is wild. To waste a year of Steph Curry. I mean, is it really just the Draymond extension that killed them? Like, I don't know, but I don't know where they. Maybe this is just Father Time is undefeated, but I mean, Steph's still playing really well. But
yeah, he's 95th percentile by EPM, which, funny enough, is lower than Jalen Brunson, who's in the 97th percentile by EPM. He ranks 12th in the entire league in EPM. I tweeted this out, but I do find this really funny. Luka Doncic, he's 5th in the league in EPM, having an MVP caliber season. Jalen Brunson is 12th. Kristaps Porzingis is 13th. Good job.
All 3 of them.
Yeah. If you could just get all 3 of those guys on a team, You might be a contender. I do think it's really funny. The Porzingis thing is a little weird because obviously they acquired him when he was hurt. It's pretty obvious throughout his first couple of years there he was still working his way back. They didn't use him well either. I think he was unhappy. That bled into some of his effort and whatever. So that one's a little tricky. But the Brunson thing is it's crazy they fumbled that. Even if I know Brunson wasn't then what he is now. Now, is some of that related to like having the opportunities, playing off of Luka and all that? Sure, but like he wasn't what he is. He wasn't then what he is now. But even what he was then, like to not give him that extension that he was apparently willing to take. I mean, that would be. We talked about the Donte DiVincenzo one. I mean,
that's a little bit more than what DiVincenzo makes now. If he was making 56 mil for 4 years, it's
the best contract in the league. They signed it.
It would be like when Steph was signed for 11 mil a year because his ankles were hurt. I mean, that was really, people talk about they won with a small guy as their best player. That's the most not talked about part is that he was their best player, but he was not paid like it, right? He was paid less than like Iguodala and I think they still had David Lee making a lot of money at that time, right? So, I think that the Mavs really, I mean, I don't know if it's all on Luka. I think they shouldn't have probably gotten rid of Carlisle. I don't know if you disagree with that, but I think he was probably the kind of coach who could have gotten Luka to change. The play style still is what it is. I do think like with KP, some of it that was on him, where he too often, I think he wanted to post up, right? For example, that was a big thing where he was like, he had butted heads with Carlisle because he wanted to post up more. He wanted to create for himself. Carlisle wanted him to be more of a pick and pop guy. Obviously the defense was diminished just as a result of the injury. And I think Porzingis did mature. And when he went to Washington, realized I got traded, like I was thought of as a rising star, and now I'm getting traded for Spencer Dinwiddie. Like he like really bought into kind of the Lowry Markkinen of it all, right? Realizing that you can be a star even if you're not creating much offense, right? And I think so. I don't want to put that all on Dallas, but that's the thing, right? And Luka came in at a young age, so it's tough to just be a leader like that. But you're seeing other young guys come in and have that kind of an impact, right? Being able to, a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has made it work playing with Jalen Williams, right? And find a way to accentuate each other's game. Chet has fit in seamlessly, right? So I don't want to question Luka's leadership ability, but there are probably things that he could have adapted or you would have liked to see from him to kind of make it work. Because he had ultimately 2 All-Stars on his team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I thought forever that the way he plays suppresses talent to a large degree. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that. I thought Porzingis was going to bounce back the way he has since then. Although I thought he was playing better his last season in Dallas. It was like when they traded him and they just kind of dumped him. That was always really weird to me. I thought it was weird anyway at the time.
I think there must have been. I think there was probably behind the scenes stuff where Porzingis may have been dissatisfied as well, right? So
yeah, I mean, I always suspected that maybe they had an agreement with him prior to the season of like, all right, look, man, just be a good soldier and we'll get you the fuck out of here before the deadline. So there's that. But the Brunson part of it, I don't know. Like I think that was always like what he showed them in that final year. Like even if you want to say,
series, right?
Yeah, even if you want to say like, I get why they didn't extend him. I can understand why they didn't extend him prior. And if you want to say he was always going to leave for New York, fine. But they didn't even make him an offer that was legit, right? They offered him something like 5 years, $100 million or something, which who cares? Like he got a better offer from the Knicks in every which way. So,
I mean, is it safe to say that wasn't an overpay? Because a lot of people said at the time it was an overpay. Is the jury
it's obviously no. There's no jury. If there's a jury, they can be dismissed because, that was certainly not an overpay, and really, it never was an overpay.
Yeah, I mean, even if he had been like just an above-average league guard, if he was Terry Rozier, it wouldn't be the worst overpay in the world, right? It probably is something like what Terry Rozier was making. It's fun facts. Based on this recent stretch, the Knicks, based on their current record, are on pace for 52 wins. One more in there in Robert Cross territory. And that includes the part of the season before OG. Is 50 wins like? Would you be disappointed if they don't get 50 wins at this point? Because I kind of think I would be.
They have, what are they? They're 30-17.
Yeah.
So they have to go 20-15 just to get to 30 wins or 50 wins.
Yeah.
With
an easier schedule, and obviously they've been at a torrid pace since the OG trade.
Depending on depending on the injury situation, yes, I'd be disappointed if they don't get 50.
Yeah, even with Randle hurt, I think that's well within reach. So definitely exciting times.
Yep, 100%. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I mean we can keep singing the praises, but like I said, there's nothing to complain about. And I think we're all pretty much, we know one of the moves is going to be either trade for one of those three guys we mentioned, or
Clarkson, whatever.
Pick up. Yeah, it seems like Clarkson's going to cost a lot though, right? Because of age and all that. So
probably, yeah.
But one of those guys, or they go for, like you said, Lowry, or maybe I still think there's a chance they go after Hayward, but.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I get that's the other thing too. Is like the only thing to complain about, heavy air quotes, by the way, is this thing that I think everybody's keenly aware of. I did find it interesting. I think Begley's mentioned this. He mentioned this yesterday, that like there was some thought prior to Randle's injury that they shouldn't do anything because they just like the group they had. But the way he phrased that makes me think because of Randle's injury, they're not going to be able to just like stay on path, so they will make a move. Be interesting to see who they ultimately make a move for. I'm not expecting. I'd be again I'd be stunned if it was like DeJounte Murray. I just don't see that being the guy that they're gonna be like, okay, let's do it. Let's like put all the fucking chips in here. Or not all the chips. It's not gonna cost you that much, but like let's take a big gamble here. I don't know. I just don't see that.
Yeah, and like on the Clarkson and Lowry point, it also seems like Utah is in 10th place now. So I don't, at this point, I feel like I read somewhere that like they are gonna try to compete now because they're good enough. So like that probably means you're gonna have to pay a bigger premium. Yeah, you'd have to pay a bigger premium, not just because of age, but also just because it doesn't seem like they're just gonna tear it down, right? So
it's just weird. I think they're open to doing anything, but to your point, like, yeah, they're open to dumping like they're probably open to trading Colin Sexton, but it would need to make it like they also, I think, understand like, okay, but if we trade Colin Sexton, like we're going to be a worse team.
Yeah.
So you have to make it worth our while for us to be happy and content to be worse this year. And also you got to consider like Lauri Markkanen is in his prime, right? He's going to be an unrestricted free agent next year. He probably doesn't have much interest in like long-term decision-making of that nature, where he's like, oh, I get it. Like, he's probably gonna be like, well, why the fuck did you just trade our point guard who's playing really well? Like, why did you do that? That's something to consider because obviously he's not going to have any shortage of suitors. Lauri Markkanen, by the way, 14th in EPM, above Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing like a star. Sexton is really playing well. I feel like he probably could get more minutes there. Do you think Cleveland is playing awesome right now? And Mitchell is playing at an MVP level or right below that. I mean, he's right there in the Brunson category. But looking at how Lowry and Sexton, and again, to your earlier point, they're both also at 25, 26, like hitting their peak range. Do you think if Cleveland could do it over, they would have just rolled the dice with a Garland, Sexton, Mobley, Lowry, Allen kind of, and see where that? Do you think there's any feeling there, any kind of buyer's remorse, or is it just completely useless to talk about it given how well they're playing right now?
Maybe, I don't know. I always feel like, who knows? Like, is Markkanen going to be what he was in like, would he have developed the same way? I don't know. Like, it's like Brunson. Like, would Brunson be what he is in New York, in Dallas? He'd still be really good, but I don't think he'd be this. Like, would Markkanen be what he is in Utah, in Cleveland? Probably not. And look, they've got decisions to make because I mean, I think you can make the real argument to make might be like, not that they did traded for Donovan Mitchell, but maybe like they should have traded high on a guy like Evan Mobley, given how well Jared Allen is playing and how dynamic their offensive fit would have been, right? With like Markkanen at the 4 and all that stuff. Like, I don't know. Those are things to consider. I don't think they would regret the trade at all. I'd be actually kind of shocked if they did regret it. I think the trade was fine. I get why they did it. In hindsight, I don't think they're a contender. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't buy this. I don't buy the construct of. I would think they're more of a contender if they traded Evan Mobley today.
You just think he compromises the spacing too much?
Yeah, I just don't see how that works in the playoffs against 4 opponents. You need to beat 4 opponents. That's going to be your spacing. Like, I don't know. I don't really trust that. I don't even, and he's not like a Randle type where he can just get inside and like bully you there and score and create offense for himself inside. So to me, it's a little bit, I don't know. I don't really trust it.
Yeah, the offense hasn't come along the way you'd hope. How much? I mean, Prez was mentioning this. I'll say this: I am definitely much more worried about Cleveland than I felt coming into the season. They found some shooters. It seems like Mitchell is playing the 1 now. Do you think it's possible when Garland? There's people like, well, you got to trade Garland. Like, they look so much better with Mitchell playing point guard. Can they not have it where Mitchell plays on ball and Garland plays more off ball? Because Garland is a very capable off ball player.
Well, they probably have to trade him because you can't win with 2 6'1" guards as your best players. So I guess they're fucked. They're shit out of luck. I don't know. I think they probably will ultimately have to, like, you can't trade Garland until you know Mitchell is going to stay anyway. So they don't really have that option. Like, they have to keep Garland until they know. Now, if Mitchell's like, I'm going to stay, I'm fucking staying. I'm not going anywhere. But like, if he does, then I think long term, yeah, I think you probably would have to move Garland because I don't think that like they are a good enough defensive backcourt. And I also think that they like stumble, like sometimes you stumble into things, right? Like maybe they stumble like, holy shit, Donovan Mitchell the 1 is way better than Donovan Mitchell the 2. And our team is better with Donovan Mitchell the 1 than Donovan Mitchell the 2. Like sometimes that just you stumble into shit, and that's what makes you a contender. I mean, that happened to Golden State, right? They basically stumbled into Draymond at the 5, and all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, guess this works. Let's do this a lot.
Yeah, and you wonder, I mean, I think Mitchell's like advanced stats really like his defense a lot more this year. You wonder how much of it is driven by him guarding maybe smaller players as opposed to, he's doing things like guarding R.J. Barrett last year, right? Which he's a pretty strong guy, but you're asking a lot of him. I think Sexton similarly has looked better on defense when he's been able to guard point of attack instead of bigger players. So
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. They got definitely some interesting decisions for them that will need to be made over the next year, basically calendar year. All right. That's a good place to end it. Stacy, let's move on where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to
plug. Stacy Patton 89. Nothing to plug right now.
Nice. I will plug all the work at Strickland. Check that out. And yeah, I will. I'll plug all the great things that the Knicks are doing. And hopefully they keep the positive momentum going tonight. All right, that is our show for today. Thank you to our sponsor, BetOnline. Thank you to everybody for listening. I hope everybody has a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.